Good evening, and welcome to the next segment of our meetup today, which is going to be a panel discussion. My name is Sharon. I'm a software engineer at Lyft. Before we start, I'd like to thank our speakers for coming out tonight and sharing their work with us. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. Our discussion today is going to be an informal chat, mainly focused around career pathways. We will be taking questions throughout the discussion, so if you have any question, feel free to add it to the Slido that we created for this meetup. You can access it by going to www.slido.com and entering the event code SFWID. We will be putting it up on the screen soon, so you can, yeah, it's there. So I think the Slido link is not visible, but if you go to slido.com and enter event code SFWID, that's the link. Okay. Our panel today comprises of some wonderful women in the engineering and leadership in data, our speakers, Ying, Sarah, and Indy, and they are joined today by two incredible leaders at the data org at Lyft, Yuko and Sumitha. Yuko is the Director of Engineering for Data Discovery and Visualization, and Sumitha leads the Experimentation framework at Lyft. So to get the ball rolling, we'll start with some introductions. So if you ladies can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what brought you to tech or data.
Okay. So I'm Sumitha, managing experimentation platform team at Lyft. So what we do, we support for A/B testing for all different teams at Lyft, and we build platform tools and services to support for different use cases of A/B testing, not just regular A/B testing. Some of the use cases are pretty unique for each team at Lyft. So we are working with each and every team to make sure they use our product to measure impact and ship features to the Lyft product. And yeah, that's me. If you're interested to learn about experimentation or knowing more about my team, happy to chat.
Hi, I'm Yuko. So let's see. So I've been doing data work for almost 18, 19 years. I started right after college to E-Trade. They had a new college program where, like, after college, you get to try a few different teams for the 9 month, 3 month each, and you get to choose a team that you want to work for. And one of the teams that I tried was data. And since then, I just fell in love with the data, how it's not just like engineering, but you also get to see what impact you're making in business through data, that I just really kind of fell in love with. So yeah, I've been doing that for a while. At Lyft, I've been here for 5 months. I've managed a data products team. So we build data products and applications that run on top of platform to make it easy to use data for anyone, not only data scientists and data engineers, but everyone in the company. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Indy. How I decided to, or got into data, I guess, is so I studied computer science in college, and my senior spring I took distributed systems, and I thought it was really cool. And so when I got, back then you got to choose your team like after you already joined Pinterest, and so I met with the data manager, and he said they were solving problems like that, and I thought he and the team were cool. So that was why I decided to join that 3 years ago, and it was really great. And yeah, fun fact, I remember I was like really bored in class the day that we were learning about Zookeeper, because we had already finished the last homework, and like the only thing left was the exam. I was like, when do I ever need to know this? But out of like every class in college, probably the only thing I use like day to day in my job right now is Zookeeper. So I'm really grateful for that.
It's like a plug for school. I guess if we're answering the question of how I got into data science in this case, it's because I don't like getting up early. Because in high school, I had to take a practical arts requirement, which computer science was the one. And in college, then they opened up a hybrid major called bioinformatics, which is kind of the intersection between biology, which was what I was really going to school for, and computer science, which turns out I enjoyed. And it was the only afternoon practical arts class. So then I just continued on the path of machine learning with single cell image recognition and naming in worms in grad school. So worms, yeah. Tiny ones, microscopic, 959 cells. I could tell you all about it.
My name is Ying. I guess to the question of what brought me to tech, I think my story goes much further in the past. So I grew up in China. When I was a kid, all our teachers have been saying, unless you're good at math or physics, you're not going to find a job in the future, right? So we all study to become either a scientist or an engineer. And I happened to be good at it, and in the end, I became an engineer, and I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's start with one question from Slido first. I think the first one is probably for Sarah. So what advice do you have for new grads looking for their first data science job?
I think the first thing is to make sure that you like data science. I think I talk to a lot of people, and I feel like everyone here has a lot to say, where they seem interested in data science conceptually because it's, I think, being advertised as like the sexiest job. I hate using that word. But they don't necessarily know that they like the ugly side of data science. So I would say, I think there are all these amazing things out there where you can work with companies like DataKind to actually pair with people and figure out if you can do some good and get access to data, and see if Kaggle is great, but working with real data is better to understand if you really, before you commit to something like this, are interested in it. And then beyond that, I would say find a company that's looking to grow you. You can start in another role and look for people that are looking for. We like to hire not for intercept, meaning where you're at, but kind of like slope, so what your passions are.
Thank you. The next question, I had a question for Ying. So what, in your opinion, is the biggest barrier to entry in tech, especially for women and underrepresented minorities? And what in your opinion, is a good way to fix that?
I didn't know I signed up for this question. Okay. I have to think. I should have a slightly different story. Right? It's also about why I became the engineer, other than my teacher told me to. I think I grew up and witnessed my parents. Both my parents are science teacher in middle school, right? And any of other friends I have, they all have working parents. So in my mind, when I grow up, it's never an option not to work. Right? So I think number one thing for any woman, right, grow up and becoming a working career woman. Right? I think our parents had a lot of influence on that. I'm very grateful for that. But back to your question, I forgot what it was.
So what is the biggest barrier to entry?
Biggest barrier. I think I was trying to say is really kind of the whole education system and how they influence us when we grow up in that area. Sorry, I don't have a better. I think I need to think a lot more on this question before I sign up for it. But if any other people have good.
I'd say biggest barrier is, did you ask for women?
Women and underrepresented minorities.
Underrepresented minorities. I would say lack of role models in the industry as such, because say when I want to join a profession, or I would like to look for role models from a community like me. to see, what is the success rate and stuff. If there are not many role models like that, I think it is going to, give me a scare feeling whether I'm doing the right thing, whether it will put me in a success path and stuff like that. I think how we can overcome is, someone has to let go of the fear and take first steps, and so that, the community gets bigger and bigger and people feel included. And that's one thing. And I do feel not just URM people, but even others can also contribute. I mean, you don't even have to do like big stuff. Like, you can start from your family. You can start encouraging your sisters. You can start encouraging women who you know. Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree. I plus 10, and I also I assume everyone here is kind of in that space. There are two attached concepts, I think, to this. There's the role models, which is like when you're younger, like how you had your parents as essentially role models, and it sort of was gender neutral. It didn't matter. But I think once you're further along in your career, there's also sponsorship and mentorship. So making sure, again, that you join companies where there's someone who is looking out for you. And then the mentorship is external to your company. Find people that, women need to connect with each other, minorities need to connect with each other, everybody needs to connect with everyone. And so it doesn't have to be limited to look around and make connections with people. I think we all learn from others, and it's really important.
And I actually think today we're all doing that, right? So being here, being kind of visible as a women leader, and thanks.
This is actually a good segue to the next question that we have, which is, what is your advice for engineers looking to transition to a leadership role?
Sorry.
Let's see. So for me, I think whenever there is an opportunity, just take it. So me, at Zynga, there was a boss who said, we're growing. Maybe we should start thinking about another management. And then I just raised my hand. I really I was going to talk about another question, but maybe I'll just answer that. I'm actually really, really shy and introvert. I'm not with my family and friends, but I am at work. I don't know if some of you may be able to relate to that. I was raised in Japan with full-time, hardworking dad and at-home mom, and they assumed that I was gonna go to college, meet someone, marry, and have kids. So they never assumed I was gonna be in career or even successful at career. So I didn't really have the support, or I just didn't know how to, I think that just got in my head that I was just, not gonna be able to do it while at work, right? So what happened was I met a boss who saw something in me, and he said, there's something about you, you're gonna be successful. There's one thing you should do. Prepare and say one thing at each meeting, just one thing. And I took that advice as is, and I prepared one thing I wanted to say at each meeting. I read agenda, I prepared, researched it, and always did that. And it got easier, and I thought about saying something that's better and better every time. So I think that helped me when there was an opportunity to become a manager, that I just said, I want to do it. I think that whole exercise has helped me to know that here's an opportunity, I think I can do it, and I just said I wanted to do it. So my advice to that is, whenever there is a chance, take it. You may not be ready for it, but you might be ready for it, right? And I think a lot of companies, Lyft to here, but provide 30-day program where you get to be the leader of the project and do one-on-one with all the teammates in that project, right? So something like that might be helpful if you feel like you're just not ready at all. But yeah.
I want to echo on that is, go get it, and also go get a mentor. I think a lot of times when you think about your own growth and learning, it's not necessarily a linear function, right? It's not goes like this. A lot of times it's actually like a step function, right? So that's how I felt about my own growth as well, is I stretch myself in some places where I clearly see the gap, and then that's where I know I need to learn and improve, right? That's how I grow like this. So I highly recommend you try that too.
That's really good advice, because being an introvert myself, and I really struggle with public speaking. So yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah, stretch. I'm going to stretch myself. Can you show the Lyft Pinterest event?
It's like, I think it's Pinterest Mad Science Fair 2018.splashthat.com. But if that doesn't work, come find me later and I'll look it up for you. It's going to be really fun. Okay, thanks.
So our next question is, what would you advise fresh master's graduates looking for their first job in data analysis? Where to look and how to land a job?
I feel like the question is about like where to get a job, because no, I don't mean that condescendingly. Yes, here. But it's I guess the reason why I'm saying that is I think data analysis is part of almost any company at this point, and it probably makes sense to just go find the jobs. My only advice to anyone getting a data science, like all of those roles, if you're going to be the first one, that sounds so exciting. Ask the question, why now? How big is your team? Why didn't you do it before? Why aren't you doing it in the future? Because if they don't have a good answer to that, then they probably don't know exactly why they're doing it. And aside from that, again, I think what everyone is saying here, which is mentorship. If you have, during your interview, a really great connection with the person who will be your manager, you're like kind of interviewing both sides.
And maybe like after, like with that, right, like look for a job and do interviews. And if you happen to have not passed that interview, it's totally fine to reach out to recruiters and ask why, right? Like maybe there's something that you could work on to improve. So don't feel like, you know, you've passed it, so now you failed and it's hard to get a job now. It's all about like learning from that interview process too.
And try again.
Yeah.
So the next question we have on Slido is very similar to what I was meaning to ask you guys, which is what kind of advice would you give people who are transitioning into tech or data from a completely different field, or who are looking to enter tech at a much later stage in life?
Because I started as an engineer before moving into management, I think I can take the question. So if you do not have any technical background, I think still if you're intrinsically motivated, like why not, right? There are a lot of online courses like Coursera, YouTube videos where you can learn pretty much all the CS fundamentals. And then particularly if you're interested in data, I'd say you can, I would, if I were you, try to learn distributed systems, some concepts of it, and then look at different architectures of different companies, understanding pros and cons of each of them. At least do that exercise, like 100 such exercises. I think that would make you, prep yourself, for the data software engineering role. Anybody wants to add?
We can move on to the next question.
The only thing I wanted to say is like there's so much to do in this field, and it's a super exciting field to be in. So like whoever wants to join, like definitely you should.
So this is a question for Indy being the engineer on the panel, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious. So as a new grad or an engineer working on data, what does your typical day, a work day look like?
Oh yeah, good question. So at Pinterest, we're pretty flexible with like when you can come into the office. So I try to get there by like 11. We have, so in terms of like my day-to-day work, it's a mix of meetings and coding. So when I'm like coding, I'm just like typing stuff in my computer, testing it and all of that. But you know, a big part of my job is like meeting not only with the customers, but also with like the infrastructure engineers who will support us, keeping in sync with my team. And then as I've been there for longer, like it's hard to believe, but like most of the company joined after me, and people like ask me for stuff. I like meet with people in order to support them and also like answer their questions on Slack. And so my day is like, I try to keep a healthy mix of like working on my own projects versus supporting people, doing interviews and like meetings and all the like non-technical parts of my work as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, interviews is, I'm sure, is a very big part of your day. So this is a question I have for all of you. Like, what is your biggest success in your career so far, or the biggest the biggest learning opportunity?
Biggest learning opportunity. I think I'm almost always learning, and I clearly feel that, you know, earlier I was talking about the stretch point, right? And so I clearly feel that when I joined Lyft, right? So coming from kind of AI infrastructure team into self-driving, right? Which I don't care about cars. So now what should I do, right? But I know that cars use AI, and I know something in there. But I clearly see that point where I'm stretching myself. So I think two things. One, I get a mentor. There's a lot of very senior women leadership, back in Google and with Lyft. Right, go and talk to them, get their wisdom. Number two, I read a book, and I would still recommend to anybody who is thinking about switching jobs what you should do. The book is called "Now You're in Charge." You're in charge. Now what? So it's talking about how to, when you're landing in a new environment, right? How to build relationship, find out the knowns and unknowns in there. So that's really good.
Oh, I didn't hear your biggest success, but I guess you already present.
It's always challenge. And after that, it becomes success.
Yeah, that's true. That's a nice way to put it. And you had said the biggest learning, or?
Biggest learning opportunity or like failure that you learned from.
Okay. Those are two different things. As far as like, for me, I think the biggest like sort of achievement I think that I would say that I feel I've had was certainly, I'm sure like everyone has had similar instances where you have these, can't ever be specific, you sort of have this big challenge where it's like a thing of beauty when the whole team comes together and they sort of support each other. I think when I was in school, especially like when you're doing research, you feel very isolated. And it very much feels like everything that you're doing, you're always worried about being scooped or having somebody else like, do some work that is adjacent, and you're having to prove yourself and the novelty around everything you're doing. And so for me, when I came to work in industry, like being able to finally have that opportunity to collaborate with someone and like knowing that you're always winning as a team and being able to elevate each other, I think those for me have been like sort of the biggest successes was being able to do that with someone. I would say, yeah, as far as the biggest challenges, I like your sort of analogy around stretch. Like you're always looking for that actually. So I think for now it's finding for the moment like the problem that we can tackle near term, because there's so many, and how do we again bring the whole team and rally around that one thing.
Yeah, I would say something that I'm really proud of so far from my career is just being able to ramp up in this area that was pretty new to me. Like I said, like basically only the lecture on Zookeeper was super useful to me from what I learned in school. When I was working on distributed systems projects in school, like the two machines were like my machine and like my friend's machine. Like which was also in the same room, which is pretty different from the scale that we're operating at Pinterest. So never having worked with systems at this scale and this kind of problems, I feel really proud of being able to dive into this area and contribute. And as for my biggest opportunity for the next few years, I feel like I'm excited to grow into more of a leadership position on my team, rather than executing on someone else's vision, making it my job to define what that vision is and what we should go after next and lead the team in that direction. So I hope to work on that in the future.
I have a lot to share, but maybe I'll just pick just two. One is Zynga. I think I see some of the faces from Zynga. At Zynga, I got a chance to run the entire data org. So it's end-to-end from data tech, data analytics, and data science. And what that meant was now I'm reporting to somebody who is not data person. So CTO or CEO, right? That was a big change for me in my career about thinking about how to present what our team is working on in a way that's understandable for people who don't have data experience, right? And it's executive leadership. So that was really interesting opportunity that I got to work on. Second one that I wanted to share is I became a mom 13 months ago. So now I'm a working mother in how to balance life and work, how to be successful, how to not feel guilty about leaving my child at home, right? The whole thing is new to me and still learning, but yeah, I would say that's one of my great impact that I was able to make, and it's still a challenge.
I don't have that many as Yuko. I would say what I built with my team at Lyft, the experimentation platform team, I do see it's a big success. I mean, I can say why. I mean, I have worked in companies before, like Facebook, Yahoo, Zynga. I can tell you how it is exactly different at Lyft, because so initially when I joined the experimentation platform team, there was no internal service available. So we were working with a third-party vendor to support for A/B testing. So in the last 1.5 years, we built all the tools and services from scratch, literally from 0 experiments. Right now, we are running 200 experiments per day, and we are supporting for close to 20,000 experiment results in our analysis tool. So I do see it's I would say one of the biggest success in my career, because it's pretty impactful to the entire company. So that's how I see it. And the learning opportunity. So initially, I was not very sure. When I got an offer for managing experimentation team, I was I do not have much experience on the experimentation domain. Should I take it? And then somehow Rand McAvee, who is SVP of Lyft, he was head of growth then. So he was no, I think you will do it. And then, yeah, it gave me an opportunity to learn an entire new domain. So definitely the lesson learned here is don't be afraid to try out something new. If you're not trying out, that means you're failing in the first step. At least if you're trying, you're failing only. But again, there is nothing like failing. You will learn something out of each experience.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Thank you.
So we have some questions on Slido. So what is the ugly side of data?
Ugly side of data. Maybe incidents.
Yeah, incidents.
I know what I wrote.
That's in there. No, I think it's in one of your slides. I forgot which one. There's an ugly side of data. I actually have that question too. I want to ask.
I wrote. There's
Sarah said that. Oh, there you go.
Oh. Did I? There's no ugly side of data. I guess data can be ugly. That's true. It can be dirty and have a bunch of issues in it. there's also like the very scary side of data science, which is people, it's like a weapon. It's like people getting behind a car and not knowing what damage you can do with it. I give many talks about this, which is like, I did this. It's like you're the person building the model, and then you're like, I'm going to ship it. It's everything that your team does, which is like, if you do not have experiments in place, you're going to destroy your data. Like you'll build a model to predict something, and then a month later, you're going to use that data, and you're just predicting what your model did, and it's a disaster. So there's that ugly side of data. I don't know, I could go on and on all day.
There is a question specifically for Indy on Slido, which is, as someone fresh out of college, what would you say Pinterest was looking for with someone not as experienced?
Yeah, sure. So for like new grad roles, obviously we don't expect people to have like worked with Hadoop before or whatever. Like you're probably not going to have that kind of experience in school. So more of what we're looking for is like, first of all, like, can you code? Can you debug your code? Can you test your code and stuff like that? Like, are you going to be a good engineer here? Another thing that we're looking for is like a growth mindset. So like if you have a problem, are you going to give up, or are you going to like try to solve it, try to learn from it? And we're really looking for the second type of person. And then finally, we're looking for people who are like excited about working at Pinterest, because we find that those people tend to be like most like happy at work and also like stay longer. So I would give this advice to like whatever company you're applying for. Like if the interviewer asks you like, why do you want to work here? You should have a good answer. So that can either be like, oh, I use the product and I'm really excited about it, or like I saw the really amazing tech talk that Indy did about data at Pinterest and I really want to like work on that kind of thing. But basically you should just have some reason why you're like excited to be at that place, because then like that place will be excited to have you. I hope, did that answer the question?
I was going to say, even if you don't know what people don't know Salesforce, but I promise it's fun.
The next question we have is, how to find a mentor in the data science space? This is very relevant to the mentorship and sponsorship that we were talking about earlier.
If you can't find one, I think all of us are here. But I happen to be in this, it's a startup called Plato. It's a management mentorship kind of network. So there are a bunch of, including me, sign up as a mentor. It's a free mentorship. I think free for mentor. We don't get paid, but mentee has to pay. I remember this model is kind of. But I think it's a great platform for both mentees to get help and pick their brains from much senior folks, and then also for mentor, I get to see and constantly refresh my memory of the various challenges in the early stage of your career.
I was going to say, it's good to have more than one mentor, right? And it's good to know what problems you want to work on. So you want to be a manager, but like you need to know what exactly you want to work on and find the right mentor. So I have like 5 mentors that I consider, that I look up to, and they all have different strengths that I go to when I have some problem. Yeah. So conflict resolution, right? Like project management, working with difficult people, career growth, right? So, yeah.
I actually want to double tap on the diversity of mentors. I also think that's not just important from the perspective of like the things that they help you with, but I think something that was brought up earlier, like the concept of leadership. I think it's really important at Salesforce in particular. This has been made very clear. There's kind of a VP equivalent of an individual contributor at any company, which is like an architect. And so leadership does not necessarily mean management. Management is not necessarily like strictly a promotion. I think a lot of people on my team ask the question about like, oh, how do I become a manager? And I think the question is often, why do you want to become a manager? Because I think if somebody at the time when I became a manager, I think you have a really nice story around someone who saw something in you and nurtured that. I think but to a certain extent, they saw something and didn't kind of offer you the counterpart of like what you might possibly be giving up, because you do give things up. In fact, if I ever try to do hands-on work, I'm taking away from someone on my team, and that's a really important thing to kind of think about. So kind of having people that are role models of individual contributor or management early on, to realize that those are definitely different tracks, and think about what each one of them can give you.
We have, I think, time for 2 more questions. So the next question is, what type of data scientist is Lyft looking for in the autonomous car?
So we are looking for data scientists like you, Ja. We're waving here. But I want to echo. On earlier. I think what's her name? Indy had a very good point about the growth mindset of a candidate. That really applies to all careers. So just +1 to that.
Next is, I'm an engineer wanting to transition to data. Do you recommend a graduate degree, or should I just go for it by looking for jobs?
I think this is something we answered already. I think even if you want to transition to data, I don't think so a course is important. I think everything is available online. I think that's like a great source. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I did something like that. I never worked in data until until I joined Lyft. So yeah, it's just about learning any new area that you want to work on. Yes. To close our session, I have a question for each one of you, which is, which books, movies, or art has inspired you or helped shape your outlook?
Interesting. All right. So I have this recency bias. So I'll just say the book I mentioned about the management. I think it's called You're in Charge, Now What?
Oh. This is hard. I didn't +1 this question. No, I guess I'm not any of like history, art, book, whatever person, but I think like I don't know. I recently watched this like former stand-up comedian that has this amazing. This is like an odd thing to talk about. She has this amazing routine or show on Netflix called Nanette. It's like very interesting, Hannah Gatsby, and she comes from a perspective of like, she brings together humor and art history and a lot around like women and in her case like growing up gay in a very like conservative society, and that's something that like recently actually was very interesting to me because I think it brought together like a lot of these concepts where just like when you meet a person, understanding how they bring together their past along with their like present experiences, that it's been for me a very recent eye-opening thing that I would encourage anyone to watch to sort of think about how people transform very rapidly by bringing together things that they learned in their past and active experiences.
I love to read science fiction because I think it just like inspires me to think about like what could be possible in some distant future, and like really engaging with that like is a like different part of my brain from like the day-to-day work of like why doesn't my code work, and like really is inspiring to me. So one example is if you've heard of the book 3 Body Problem, I thought that was a great trilogy. So I definitely recommend that. Yeah.
What got you here won't get you there. And that was a really good book that I read when I became a director first time. It's the engineering manager, internal management, and now external side. That book was really helpful. I read Lean In like 100 times. But I have to say, I didn't lean in when I was pregnant, and I think that was that worked out for me. So if anyone want to talk about that, I would love to talk about it. But I still think that book is awesome.
I read books, but I wouldn't say more than books. I would say people around me inspire a lot. For example, when I was growing up, I was inspired hugely by my father, who is a professor, and I got inspired by my mom, who was also working, and how she struggled to bring us up. Those days, there's no daycare and stuff. I don't know how she managed. And then, now I get inspired from my husband also, because he helps me with my kids, and he's a super workaholic too. So I do see him and get inspired, looking at him. I just pick examples from people around and motivate myself every day.
Awesome, thank you so much. I've been making notes of all the books and movies you guys suggested, so I have a ton of reading to get to. Thank you so much for joining us. I definitely learned a lot, so let's give our panelists a round of applause.